My mother slapped the champagne flute out of my hand before I could take a single sip. "Don't touch anything," she hissed, her smile still frozen for the guests gathered in the ballroom of the Hawthorne estate. "You already embarrass us enough." Crystal shattered at my feet. Heads turned. Conversations stalled mid-laugh. Somewhere behind me, a string quartet faltered, then awkwardly continued. I stood there in the borrowed dress, too tight in the shoulders, the hem an inch too short, while my sister Lydia watched from the dais like a queen observing a peasant's execution. Her wedding gown glittered under the chandeliers, thousands of dollars of silk and beadwork funded, she believed, by her future husband's family. She believed a lot of things that weren't true. "Nora," Lydia said sharply, microphone still in hand, her voice echoing through the hall. "I asked you to stay in the back. Why are you out here?" Every face turned toward me. I felt the old, familiar burn crawl up my neck. "You told me to help the coordinator," I said quietly. "They needed." "Oh, don't play dumb," my father cut in, stepping forward. Senator Robert Whitfield. Beloved. Respected. His disappointment had always carried more weight than anger. "This is not a science conference in Iowa. This is a society wedding." A ripple of laughter followed. Polite. Cruel. I scanned the room instinctively, my eyes landing on Ethan near the far wall. My husband stood still, hands clasped, jaw tight. He didn't intervene. Not yet. That was our agreement. "Lydia," my mother said loudly, adjusting her pearls, "we discussed this. Nora doesn't belong up here. People will ask questions." Questions. About my work. About why a soil scientist from Nebraska was standing at a black tie wedding in Connecticut. About why I hadn't climbed the same polished ladder as the rest of them. Lydia sighed theatrically. "Nora, just go. Please. I don't want a scene." I left then. I couldn't help it. It slipped out sharp and brittle. "A little late for that," I said. Silence crashed down. My brother-in-law, Marcus Hale, finally stepped forward. He wore his confidence like a tailored suit, venture capitalist, philanthropist, golden boy of Lydia's world. He placed a hand on her arm, then looked at me with something close to pity. "Hey," he said softly like I was unstable. "Why don't you step outside? Get some air." Outside. Into the rain pounding the estate grounds, streaking the glass walls behind me. Thunder rolled, low and distant. My mother leaned in close, her breath hot with champagne. "If you loved your sister at all," she whispered, "you wouldn't do this to her." "Do what? Exist?" I bent down, picked up my clutch and straightened. My knees trembled, but my voice didn't. "I came because you asked me to," I said. I stayed quiet. I stayed small. But I won't apologize for being here. Lydia's face hardened. "Then leave." Gasps rippled through the room. My father didn't stop her. He nodded once, curt, final. "Go home, Nora." I turned and walked away as the doors swung open and rain hit my face like a slap. The cold soaked through the thin fabric of the dress instantly. I heard the doors shut behind me, cutting off the music, the warmth, the life of the party. I stood alone on the marble steps, shaking. A second later, the doors opened again. Ethan stepped out into the storm without hesitation, his tuxedo already darkening with rain. He draped his jacket over my shoulders and pulled me close. "They don't know," I whispered, my voice breaking for the first time. "I know," he said simply. Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating the estate, the tented reception, the valet line of luxury cars, the family crest projected onto the lawn. The Whitfield legacy on full display. My phone buzzed in my clutch. One message. Funds transferred. Final confirmation received. I laughed softly, almost hysterically. "What's funny?" Ethan asked. "They just threw out the person who paid for the flowers," I said. His mouth curved into a grim smile. "And the band. And the catering. And the venue." Thunder cracked louder this time. Inside that ballroom, Marcus Hale was probably raising a toast, unaware that the accounts propping up his empire had just been frozen. Unaware that the evidence Ethan had been collecting for months, shell companies, falsified environmental impact reports, stolen research, was already en route to the authorities. unaware that the soil scientist he dismissed for years knew exactly how to expose rot beneath a polished surface. I took a breath, rain mixing with tears on my face. They made their choice, I said. Ethan nodded. Now we make ours. Behind us, the lights inside the estate flickered once, then went out. The lights didn't come back on. That was the first sign something had gone terribly wrong. From the rain-soaked lawn, Ethan and I watched guests inside the Hawthorne estate shift uncomfortably as emergency lighting flickered on. Phones came out. Murmurs spread. The string quartet stopped playing entirely. A wedding without music feels like a body without a pulse. I knew the exact second Marcus Hale realized this wasn't a coincidence. My phone buzzed again. Marcus Hale, did you do something? I didn't respond. Ethan opened the car door for me, his movements calm, deliberate. We stick to the plan, he said quietly as I slid inside. No improvising. I nodded, though my chest felt too tight to breathe. Years of swallowing humiliation had trained me to endure quietly, but this was different. This was exposure. Sunlight. Consequence. As we pulled away, I caught one last glimpse of my parents through the glass doors. My mother's posture was rigid, her lips moving rapidly as she spoke to the wedding coordinator. My father stood off to the side, phone pressed to his ear, brow furrowed, not with concern for me, but with the dawning panic of a man realizing he might not control the narrative. For the first time in my life, I didn't flinch. The drive back to our hotel in Stamford was silent except for the rain and the low hum of the engine. Ethan reached over and laced his fingers through mine. You okay? He asked. I will be, I said. I just didn't think it would hurt this much. He nodded. Roots resist being pulled, even when the soil is poisoned. That was one of the things I loved about him. He never underestimated what I did. Soil science wasn't glamorous, but it taught you everything about what thrived, what decayed, and what could never be saved. When we reached the hotel, my phone rang. Lydia. I let it ring. Then again. Then a text. You've ruined my wedding. Mom is hysterical. Dad says you've embarrassed the family. Call me now. I handed the phone to Ethan. They still think this is about the wedding. He exhaled slowly. They always do. An hour later, the news broke. Power outage disrupts society wedding. Investigation into financial backers underway. The article was vague, cautious. But I knew better. So did Marcus. At midnight, there was a knock on our hotel door. Ethan's jaw tightened. Stay here, he said, already moving. I'm not hiding, I replied, standing beside him as he opened the door. Marcus Hale stood in the hallway, rain gone but arrogance intact, though now it wavered around the edges. His tie was loosened, his smile forced. Nora, he said like we were old friends. Can we talk? I crossed my arms. About what? Your wedding? Or your fraud? His eyes flicked past me then back. You're tired. Emotions are high. Let's not say things we can't take back. Too late, Ethan said coolly. Marcus's smile dropped. I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to stop. No. Accounts don't just freeze by accident. Oh, they do, I said. When regulators notice inconsistencies. He laughed, sharp and humorless. You're a dirt scientist. You think you can take me down. I stepped closer. I study contamination. How toxins migrate. How long damage stays hidden before it poisons everything. His face tightened. You used my research, I continued, my voice steady. My soil impact assessments. You altered them to push through developments that never met federal standards. You buried the truth because you assumed I'd never notice. Marcus swallowed. You signed an NDA. I signed one, I agreed. You violated 15 laws. The hallway felt suddenly too quiet. You don't want to do this, he said. Your parents are not my leverage, I snapped. Something ugly flashed across his face. You think exposing me won't destroy them too? That one landed. Behind him, the elevator doors opened, and my mother stepped out. Her eyes locked onto me instantly. Nora, she said, breathless. What is happening? Marcus turned slowly, panic now fully visible. Mrs. Whitfield, this is a misunderstanding. You lied to us, she said faintly, staring at him. The funding. The donor list. The reason the power went out. My father appeared behind her, phone still in hand. Nora, he said sharply. Fix this. Right now. I looked at them, really looked. Two people who had measured my worth by appearances, by proximity to power, by how well I fit their story. I already did, I said. Marcus lunged forward, grabbing my wrist. You don't understand what you're starting. Ethan moved instantly, shoving him back against the wall. Touch her again, Ethan said quietly, and this becomes much worse for you. Security arrived seconds later, drawn by the noise. Marcus straightened his jacket, mask snapping back into place. This isn't over, he said to me, his voice low. You think the truth always wins? I met his gaze. No. But lies always collapse. As security escorted him away, my mother reached for me and stopped inches from my arm, like she didn't know if she still had the right. You've torn this family apart, she whispered. I shook my head. I just stopped holding it together. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't family. Federal Environmental Crimes Task Force. We need to speak with you immediately. I exhaled slowly. Behind me, Ethan squeezed my hand. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about Marcus anymore. It was about everything my family had buried, secrets far older than tonight. By morning, the Whitfield name was trending. Not for Lydia's wedding photos. Not for my father's speech about legacy and honor. But for a quiet addendum buried beneath the headlines. Senator Whitfield linked to environmental oversight failures in Hale investigation. I read it twice, then a third time, my stomach hollowing out. Ethan was already dressed, jacket on, phone pressed to his ear as he paced the hotel room. Yes, he said calmly. She'll cooperate fully. Voluntarily. He glanced at me. Yes. We understand the scope. He ended the call and met my eyes. They want you in D.C. Not just as a witness. As what? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. That was never a good sign. As a connective thread, he said finally. Marcus didn't operate alone. I sat on the edge of the bed, the carpet cold beneath my feet. My father. Ethan nodded once. I wasn't surprised. Just tired. The task force offices were housed in a federal building that smelled faintly of old paper and burnt coffee. Inside a small conference room, 3 investigators laid out what they already knew: Marcus's shell companies, falsified environmental compliance reports, bribed consultants. Then one of them slid a thin folder across the table. Your name appears here, she said. I opened it. My research. My early field studies. Data I'd published years ago. Only now annotated, altered, stamped with approvals I'd never given. They used my work to greenlight projects that poisoned groundwater, I said softly. Yes, the investigator replied. And someone ensured those approvals passed without scrutiny. I didn't need to ask who. When I left the building, my phone was already vibrating. My father. I answered. What have you done? He demanded, skipping pleasantries entirely. I told the truth, I said. You should try it sometime. You have no idea how this works, he snapped. Marcus was reckless. That doesn't mean you burn down everyone connected to him. Connected. I repeated. Or protected. Silence. Then quieter. Come home, Nora. The words hit harder than I expected. Home had always meant obligation. Control. A place where love came with conditions. I am home, I said. Just not where you want me. That evening, we returned to Connecticut, not to the hotel, but to the Whitfield estate itself. Ethan had insisted. If they're hiding something, he said, pulling into the long gravel drive, it'll be here. The house loomed ahead, dark except for one lit window on the second floor, my father's study. Inside, the air was heavy with old money and older secrets. Portraits of Whitfield's past lined the walls, their eyes following me as I moved through the halls I'd once memorized as a child desperate for approval. My mother waited in the sitting room. She looked smaller somehow. Fragile. It would have moved me once. Nora, she said, standing. We need to talk. So do I replied. She gestured toward the study. Your father's with his attorney. I'm not here for him. Her lips pressed together. You don't understand what's at stake. The foundation. The trusts. Your sister. I understand perfectly, I cut in. You built everything on appearances. And you taught us to pretend cracks didn't exist. Her eyes filled with tears. We did what we had to. For who? I asked. For Lydia? Or for yourselves? She didn't answer. I walked past her and up the stairs. The study door was locked. Ethan stood behind me, silent, steady. I knocked once. Hard. The door opened. My father looked older than he had the night before. His confidence was frayed now, edges worn thin. What do you want? He asked. The truth, I said. All of it. He laughed bitterly. You think you're owed that? Yes, I said. Because your name is all over the files tied to Marcus's projects. And because I found something else. I stepped inside and placed a folder on his desk. Old deeds. Trust amendments. A birth certificate. Not mine. My father's face drained of color. You want to explain this, I said evenly, or should I let the task force ask? He sank into his chair. 30 years ago, he said quietly, I had a son. The words echoed in the room. With whom? I asked, though dread already coiled in my chest. A woman I couldn't marry, he said. A woman whose family would have destroyed my career. My mind raced. And what happened to him? He grew up elsewhere, my father said. Provided for. Kept out of sight. I swallowed. Marcus. My father closed his eyes. Everything clicked into place. The protection, the funding. The blind eyes turned at every step. You didn't just protect a son-in-law, I said. You protected your secret. You would have done the same, he whispered. No, I said. I would have chosen differently. A sound came from the doorway. Lydia stood there, pale, shaking. A son, she whispered. You're saying Marcus is. My father didn't look at her. She laughed then. Sharp. Broken. So my marriage was a lie. Our family. It was necessary, my mother said from behind her. Lydia turned on her. You knew. My mother looked away. The house felt like it was collapsing inward, walls buckling under the weight of decades of deceit. My phone buzzed. A single message from an unknown number. If you expose him, you expose me too. And I won't go quietly. I looked up slowly. Marcus stood at the end of the hallway, eyes dark, smile gone. And behind him, flashing blue lights painted the walls in harsh, unforgiving color. The blue lights didn't flicker. They stayed. That was how I knew this wasn't another bluff, not another threat whispered in a hallway meant to scare me back into silence. The truth had crossed a line where it could no longer be dragged back into the dark. Marcus took one step backward, then another. Dad, he said sharply, his voice slicing through the stunned quiet of the house. You're going to fix this. My father didn't move. For the first time in my life, Senator Robert Whitfield looked exactly like what he was beneath the polish, a man who had built everything on control and was now watching it evaporate. Nora, my mother whispered, gripping the arm of a chair. Please, think about what this will do to us. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who taught me to smile through discomfort. To shrink. To accept neglect as discipline. I am thinking about it, I said calmly. For the first time, the front door opened downstairs. Heavy footsteps. Voices. Measured. Professional. Unafraid. Federal agents filled the foyer. Marcus Hill. One of them called out. You are under arrest for conspiracy, wire fraud, environmental crimes, and obstruction of justice. Marcus laughed once, wild and disbelieving. You don't understand who I am. Oh, we do, the agent replied. That's why we're here. As they moved toward him, Marcus's eyes locked onto mine. You think you won, he said, venom thick in his voice. You don't know what you've started. I stepped forward before Ethan could stop me. I know exactly what I started, I said. Accountability. They cuffed him then, right there in the hallway where Lydia and I had once played as children, pretending we belonged to a family that could never love us equally. Lydia made a small sound and sank onto the stairs. No, she whispered. This can't be real. I knelt in front of her, my voice gentler than she deserved, but honest. Your marriage was built on lies. That doesn't make you weak. But pretending it didn't matter will. She looked up at me, eyes hollow. You knew. I suspected, I said. And I still showed up. That's the difference between us. My father cleared his throat. Nora, he said quietly, if this goes public. It already has, Ethan said, stepping beside me. Another agent approached my father. Senator Whitfield, we'll need you to come with us as well. My mother gasped. For what? For facilitating oversight interference, the agent replied, and for failing to disclose conflicts of interest tied to federal environmental approvals. My father closed his eyes. As they led him away, he looked back at me one last time. I did everything for this family, he said. I met his gaze steadily. No, I replied. You did everything for your image. That was the last thing I ever said to him. The fallout was swift and merciless. Marcus's companies collapsed within days. Investors fled. Properties were seized. Lydia filed for annulment before the end of the week. My father resigned in disgrace. My mother retreated into silence, her social circle dissolving overnight. And me? I slept. For the first time in years, I slept without bracing for disappointment. Months later, I stood on a stretch of reclaimed farmland in Nebraska, the wind carrying the clean scent of rain and earth. Ethan stood beside me, hands in his pockets, watching as young researchers collected soil samples nearby. They named the grant after you, he said. I shook my head. After the work. Not me. He smiled. That's why they chose you. The Whitfield Foundation no longer existed. Its assets had been redistributed into environmental restoration programs. Ironically, the only legacy of my family that would ever do real good. I received one final letter. From my mother. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a quiet admission that she'd built her life around fear and passed it down like inheritance. I didn't write back. Some roots must be cut completely for new growth to survive. As the sun dipped low over the fields, Ethan reached for my hand. You okay? He asked. I nodded. I know who I am now. A soil scientist. A woman who understood decay and regeneration. Someone who no longer needed approval from people who only valued her when she was silent. My family lost everything they worshipped. I gained something better. Peace. Strength. And a life that finally belonged to me.